Welcome, my friends, to the Sage Aquay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking, and I'm your host, Mike Williams. Tonight we have part 2 of our show with Cara St.Louis and Harald Kautz-Vella. Cara and Harald have co-authored and released a new book called Dangerous Imagination, Silent Assimilation. In this segment, Cara will take the reins and we will discuss the new book, as she explains the orchestrated social engineering which is all around us, the cult of personality within the truth movement, along with her thoughts on how to overcome the perceived obstacles to getting humanity back on track. So without further ado, here is Cara St. Louis.
Let's talk about dangerous imagination, silent assimilation. I don't know what it's going to be called in Germany. I leave that up to Harald and my publisher. Because what I learned initially, Michael, in the translation of The Sun Thief is that in some ways the material ends up having to be rewritten because it has to be functional in the language in which it's going.
Right.
And so for me, at the very beginning, that was very, very difficult for me because I thought, you can't rewrite my book. What are you doing? But in essence, you have to rewrite the book because it has to sing. It has to sing in the language in which it is being. And that's where Harald's abilities to sort of channel and love things, come in. Anyway, and he's also talking about this addressing of the symptoms of black goo as infopathic, which I find is extremely interesting in the sense that one of the things that I believe ultimately is our battleground is the morphic field. The morphic field, again, we're back to Rupert Sheldrake, we're back to sort of John Lash in a way, but we're certainly back to Harold's ideas, Harold's physics. The human being, in my estimation and my understanding, and this is intuitive on my part, is the primary conduit between the imagination, which is the formation of thoughts and ideas and creation pre-materially on this plane on which we are living, and the material manifestation that comes through us. We do that. That's why we can call ourselves co-creators. And one of the things that's been happening, Mike, is that informationally so much garbage is trying to be funneled back into the morphic fields to mess us up, to completely pollute that environment. Now, this is one of the things that Harald and I haven't had a chance to talk about, and he will probably undoubtedly have better or clearer ideas about this. But in my understanding right now, it is a battle of control of the human being because we have the imagination. We have that I mage in, that magician quality, if you will, of being able to grasp, to hold an idea in our heads and channel it through who we are and use the morphic field to materialize it in this plane. That is something that our predator, and I do call it a predator, and obviously there's lots to discuss based on what Harald has brought about that, but this is a capability that is desperately longed for by an entity. Like I would say, let's just call it our contact for right now for purposes of having to have a word to discuss it. Would love to be able to do that, but cannot. And so ultimately it's about controlling humanity. It's about controlling the human being relative to the morphic field. This is something I discovered in writing the book, which is what's so amazing, Mike, about these opportunities I get to put these thoughts down. And I will tell you how the idea for this book began just a few days before I saw Harald at this conference. And that was when I was being interviewed by Richie Allen on The People's Voice. The first question he asked me was, Cara, everybody asks me in relationship to this idea about chemtrails, couldn't it be a contrail? What's the difference between a contrail and a chemtrail? And at that moment, I literally saw the meme. I saw it, Mike.
Yeah.
It's the hamster wheel they've got us on. It's this thing that we can't get off. It's a capturing of our ability to think and a funneling of it into this wheel that we can't stop. And so in my mind, when he asked me that question, I literally had this vision of this button that gets pushed on our foreheads this was the visual. Around and around and around we go, and we can't get past that question, which has been answered a million ways to Sunday, Mike. Up one side and down the other. It's a really easy question to answer.
But that's the tactic, though. That's the tactic, Cara, right? Is to keep people in debate. It's not just with that. Yes. It's with everything.
Yes. So there's that. But it's not even, I mean, when you use the characterization keep us in debate, it almost gives us a free will that is being weaned away from us in terms of these thought processes. It's a hamster wheel that we're on that we don't even know we're on. It's very simplistic. And around and around and around we go, and it's almost a physical thing now that we have to, but look how easy it is to break if you just sort of have that realization, oh my God, oh my God, around and around and around we're going here.
Right.
And then the other thing was, Richie asked me was, too many people would have to know about it for this to be the case. Well, okay, so we hear that all the time. Those two questions, though, made me realize that it wasn't going to be enough to just start talking about the chemicals in the air, the chemicals in the ground, the evidence, the ample evidence that we are being poisoned from the skies. It's there. It's irrefutable. And yet here we are. Mike, why? Why have we become entities that are allowing ourselves to be destroyed in this way, physically, our physicality? Why are we not only allowing it, but gleefully, almost happily doing it to each other? That's a question that I really had to answer. So what I did was go back, and I talked to Harald about this almost immediately. Harald, we need to write about this. I don't know what it's going to be together, but we need to do something together. And he calls it a no excuses book. And he's right. It's no excuses. His chemistry, physics, and some of the esoteric stuff that he's bringing, and his direct experience with all of this, yeah? And my research into the snapshot of the 20th century social engineering that's got us here. You could trace all this back millennia, but that problem with tracing it back millennia is that then people stop listening to you. What, millennia, what? Okay, so you've lost them. The idea, I think, as was the idea in The Sun Thief, is to keep it local, keep it relative for them. So let's take a snapshot of the 20th century and let's look at the forces that combined to maneuver us, not just individually, but en masse. And so the first part of Dangerous Imagination is about that. The second part is about what Harald brings to the table. And so we have to talk about this discovery of the human imagination and why that is the most powerful thing there is, and why that is what has come under vicious and unrelenting attack in the 20th century to shut us down, and the ways in which it's been attacked, and the entities that have been developed, like the Frankfurt School, like the Tavistock Institute, like political correctness as a weapon, all of these sorts of things, like the industry that was begun by Sigmund Freud's nephew that we can now call the entertainment industry that actually got plugged into the Frankfurt School as well. It is all meant to create this giant hologram, if you will. It's just a construct that's built around us to divorce us from who we are.
Yes, the Matrix.
Yes, it is the Matrix. And it is put in place to numb us out, to pacify us, and to make us maneuverable as groups of human beings. And ultimately, what I came to think and to believe is that because they cannot become co-creators, Mike, that what they're after is our ability to interface with the morphic fields.
For the audience that is unaware of the morphic field or the morphic resonance, what exactly is that? How would you describe that?
Well, I'm going to do it imperfectly. I want to get Harald back at some point to talk about this in a better way. But my understanding of the morphic field is that it is, in a way, a prototype. If you've ever had any experience of being able to understand what lies beyond the material, which some people call the etheric, some people call counter space, it is that which is there, but it is outside the realm of our material physicality. It's between, I'm sitting here looking at a chair. It is that which I cannot see, which is between me and that chair. It is, I don't want to call it space. I want to call it counter space. Okay. Let's say you cut a magnet in half. Now this is coming from Rupert Sheldrake's work. Say you cut a magnet in half. You don't have a north pole and a south pole in two halves of a magnet. You have a north and you have two magnets, two complete magnets, the north and the south, and the north and the south. Yeah. And the morphic field is what surrounds that magnet, and it's the prototype. It is the thing that holds what a magnet actually is. And because human beings are in possession, because we are who we are in possession of what we have termed the imagination. We actually, I believe, are conduits between the morphic field and the material plane in a very real way. So you have, on one side, you have prototypes of all it is and all that can be, but we are able to tap into all that is and manifest that self, manifest what we decide to manifest on the physical plane. This is why we can call ourselves co-creators.
Okay, so it almost sounds to me like, let me just see if I can grasp this myself, but it sounds like perhaps it's the consciousness or even memory or the design that's contained within the etheric or the cosmic plan or construct. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that's what Rupert Sheldrake calls it. He calls it the realm of habit and the realm of memory.
Okay.
I might try in my very imperfect way to define it ever so slightly differently, because I really believe that memory itself resides in the water, and we are, what are we, 70, 80, 90% water?
Yeah.
Human beings. There's also a memory in the earth. There's a memory in the earth that's housed in the water, in my opinion. I've talked to master dowsers, geomancers, and people who are guardians of the monoliths. And we talk about the memory that's housed in water. And my opinion is that's what fracking is all about, to try to destroy the memory of the earth. Just my opinion, just an intuition that came to me. It seems to make sense to me, because otherwise there's no reason to do it. And
Yeah.
Harold pointed out, this is black magic.
Yeah, they destroy everything.
Yes.
That's part of our living, so the fracking aspect of it, I would agree, is
Yeah.
is part of that.
Well, and the chapter that I just sent to Harold, because I was still working on it, is about the folk soul, Mike. The folk soul is why, I mean, when I look at the snapshot of the 20th century and what was done and who it was done to and who it was done through, you have to keep coming back to Russia, you have to keep coming back to Germany, and then you have to come to the United States. And I have to ask myself these questions. Why Russia? Why always Germany in the 20th century? Why the United States now? What is it about? These are just land masses, are they not? These are just nations, and nations are just economic entities, which has nothing to do with anything, really, except moving economic materialism around. It has to do with the folk soul, and the folk soul is something that you can explore. I explored it through Rudolf Steiner, who's at the bottom of my baseline cosmology. And the thing about the folk soul, it resides, in my opinion, in the morphic field. And it is this is why they have not been able to completely capture Germany, completely eliminate the countries that are part of the EU. You can try to make a nationalistic grouping of cultures. You could try to destroy a culture, like they've tried very hard to destroy the United States culture via social engineering. But ultimately, what you're going to come up against is the folk soul. And the folk soul resides in the morphic field. And it is like cutting a magnet in half. You cannot destroy it. You cannot cripple it. Ultimately, you cannot. And this is why I think my thinking now goes to this idea of the human being as a mediator between the morphic field and the material plane, and why informationally, one of the things that they've discovered is, yes, they can move us as people, individuals, and they can move us as populations via information. Yeah, they sure can. They can try to pollute the morphic field backwards via that information. But the reality is, Mike, as we have said, enough people are waking up that we say things like raising the consciousness, and people are getting kind of tired of people are getting numbed out to hearing that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's overused. Yep.
Yeah, and we don't want to have that go directly to New Age consciousness, because that's a completely different
Right.
con, really. But the reality is, if enough people are putting pure and real and actual truth into the morphic field back and forth, then everybody's going to know it, because everybody's in the morphic field. Everybody's consciousness is in the morphic field. So I think ultimately that is where we'll win the battle.
Is that, are we talking about maybe a sense of an innate sense of belonging that a person has to their culture, beliefs, to their people?
I mean, this is what's going on in the Ukraine. This is a perfect example. That's the Russian folk soul at work.
Right.
No matter what the nationalism or the fascist agenda or the NATO agenda or the black magic agenda, everything that's going on that particular battlefield is not going to touch the Russian folk soul, which is at the base of those people's consciousness.
Yeah.
And what that is, what the folk soul is, it is a power into which we incarnate to perform functions. Yes? Each folk soul has a function. Each folk soul has a mission. That's a really good word for it. And the people who incarnate in the realm of that folk soul are there to be part of enacting a mission. Yes? And each of these folk souls is uniquely endowed with abilities and talents and also the negative stuff. Everything that goes to make up that folk soul is there to create a condition or affect a condition on this plane. Yeah? And that is why it's really ultimately untouchable.
Yeah, that's exactly right, because I look at it as you're explaining it, maybe these are not the proper words, but like an innate reflexive priority that a person has. As an example, with me, I have a very strong attachment to humanity and the planet. And because I'm so attached to that, that is my priority. It's like it's an unconscious, it's always there. And they're trying to disrupt what you're calling the folk soul so that people relinquish what is natural to them,
right,
so that they can engage in unnatural types of behavior or reactions.
Right, right. The primary objective has been to distract us and make us forget and keep us so absolutely busy with what I call the 3Ds, which are dependency, debility, and dread. This mind control apparatus that they perfected during the Korean War, really, to keep us absolutely occupied, completely occupied, so that we don't look toward the morphic fields. We don't look toward what we can do. We don't, that connection becomes so polluted in a way, clogged, that, and if they do that for long enough, then we forget it's even there. And we don't even try.
Yeah, so Cara, so this comes in your book. You talk about social engineering.
Yeah.
And the cultural destruction of Western civilization. So this all plays into that, yes?
Absolutely. And there's been a patchwork quilt of organizations that have sprung up sort of simultaneously to do that. You've got the Tavistock Institute, which came out of England. You've got the Frankfurt School, which was a result of a botched, completely failed attempt to turn Russia on its head. Little did they know that Russians were going to tune right back into their folk soul, and that was going to be the savior there. Anyway, it was a reaction to that, to try to get that Marxist ideology, Freudo-Marxist ideology, back on track. And then to turn the United States into a giant social engineering laboratory. And the reason it's important to get the United States out of the way is because this is really the land of individualism, is it not? This is a land where we understand sovereignty in our bones, because that's our folk soul. Right. And so, if I don't think any entity who's out to dominate the planet is going to get anywhere without crushing the Americans. It just has to be done. And so that has been job one since about 1930, I think, when the Frankfurt School had to travel from Germany to the United States and became the Institute of Social Research. And, the book basically describes the genesis of how that happened in the 20th century. And the reality is that what we need to do more than anything is turn off our television. We need to stop reading the newspapers, the mainstream media, because it's absolutely all social engineering. Every single solitary ounce of it is social engineering. And we need to start listening to people when they're talking about how to break free. It's really very simple. You just have to say no. You just have to unplug yourself. But right now we're plugged in. And then you know what, Mike? The question becomes, kind of scary. What comes after that? Well, I don't think we have to be scared of that. I think that we are ultimately absolutely capable of incarnating what comes next, whatever that happens to be.
Well, let me ask you, Cara, as you know, the social engineering aspect of it, some will argue that it's too far gone, that, if you take a look at much of the youth today, they have been born and raised into a system in which they don't know anything else. You and I we do. We remember going back to school and actually
Yeah.
learning something. We remember being taught about the Constitution, being taught, quote unquote, real history, as real as it could possibly be, and in this matrix. But
Yeah.
today there's so much conditioning that children have been born and raised into. We talk about just simple things like going to the airport, the TSA, or DUI checkpoints. You have to show your identification if you're walking in the street. Cop wants to see some identification. You haven't committed any crime, mind you. You just happen to be walking around the street, but he decides that he's going to ask you to show him that you're carrying your papers. And the one that really concerns me the most is because I've had conversations with young folks in their 20s, maybe even early 30s, where they don't have any concept of owning a home or having a sense of owning property. So to them, renting, as an example, is something that, that's just the way it is. Owning a home, that's nice. Yes, my parents owned a home, but that's not something that I'm likely to ever be able to do. And they don't really think past that. It's just a kind of a foregone conclusion that it's just not going to happen. So this is the way it is. And they just go on their merry way. It's apathy and almost a defeatist type of attitude. We would look at it that way because we know we have a reference point. We can look at it and say, shouldn't be like that. But they don't see it that way because they don't have that reference. That's where they live. That's their environment. That's their conditioning. So going back to how do you break the social engineering from that perspective if entire generations are born and bred into a system which they think is okay?
Yeah, this is a really interesting point that you raised because that's been a genesis and evolution in my thinking. And once again, it goes back to the morphic field. Okay, I'm not so sure that it's not a bad idea that they get disengaged from this idea of private property and all of that stuff. This do you know this is a nationalistic economic agenda that may have been foisted on us. It's certainly not Aboriginal. It's not Native American. This idea of ownership and things like that. And so I think that that may backfire on anybody who thought that was that was really just creating apathy. I think what it is in a way it clears a space. It clears a space for them to come to something completely different. And this has to do with the morphic field. The more that goes in, if you trust the idea, it's like the 100th monkey thing, Mike. If you trust the idea that if enough gets into the field, then if enough people get it and get it into the field, and that everybody gets it, then you understand why they're so desperate to keep us away from that. Even these children whose material raising has been under this terrible, terrible system that we've been living under in the United States. There's two things, really. First of all, they came here to fight this battle. I'm absolutely convinced of that. So on their primal spiritual level, they know what's going on. They've just come under attack that's absolutely brutal. Mm-hmm. Absolutely brutal to keep them from becoming conscious, which is why the children are being attacked all the way down to birth. Absolutely all the way down to birth, because they have to keep these children from incarnating. They know they're going to wake up. That's not the issue. They will wake up because they're coming here to do this battle. But so they have to stop them from the minute they draw their first breath, in a way, which is why they're vaccinating children in the hospital, that kind of thing. So there's that, all right? And I think a really good example, although this is a brand new phenomenon and we have to cast a wary eye over it and have a real look at it. What about this idea that the New York City Police Department is standing down largely? Now, I wouldn't have expected that in reaction to the police shootings.
Yeah, right.
I wouldn't have expected that. I would have expected this to be at the moment where we could go to war. This would be the moment for the brother against brother kind of thing that they're looking for in the United States. I would not have expected the police to stand down. So I wonder why. Why? Is this the morphic field, Mike?
That's a good question, because I understand your point that they could have easily have escalated, right?
Hey, it's the opportunity of a lifetime.
And it's interesting you should say that, because my thought was, I'll just give you my thinking on what happened there. They know that they are revenue generators.
Yeah, that's that.
Right. So, look, we're just not going to write any more tickets. We're just going to deplete the revenue coffers, and we're going to show you,
Yeah.
So, but even that, let's just say it's that, right? Mm-hmm, even that's better than escalating violence.
Right.
right?
Right.
So,
This is a big deal. This, what they're doing is a big deal. I think it's just remains to be seen
yeah,
what it actually is. But I find it to be hugely interesting in terms of what I'm trying to get across, the morphic field. And if enough people know, then things will just automatically change because you can't. This is the idea of you are that prototypical,
right.
that prototype of human. What is it? Where does it live? And can it really ever be destroyed or permanently affected? See, I don't think it can.
If I understand you correctly, what you're saying is, look, as we break down the matrix, then people are going to circle back to what's natural to them,
Yeah.
right? Going back
Yeah.
to it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there is always the question, and if you have children of your own, it's very painful to watch them go through what they're going through right now. But interestingly enough, I asked my oldest son, Mike, you and I end up talking about my oldest son so often, it's funny. But I asked him not too long ago, because I visited for Christmas, because we moved around so much during his growing up. I said, "Where would you say you're from?" And he goes, "You know what, Mom? I'm just an observer." Damn, Mike.
Hmm.
I was stunned that he knew that.
Yeah.
But he knows it no matter what he has to live with on his daily life, no matter what they all have to live with in terms of being under attack all the time, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, all of those things to try to break them down. He knows that, Mom, I'm just an observer. Well, I'll be damned.
Now, does he also see what's going on in the world?
He does. Now he's coming up to my children have been and I can talk about them because they're just very handy examples and I know them intimately, but it's been very difficult for them to follow my trail since my mother died in 2010 because it's intimate to them and it's part of their initiation as spiritual beings, and it's also very painful for them. So but they have been coming along, and they absolutely applaud what I'm doing. They understand on a spiritual level why it's important that I do what I do and why I really need to do what I do, and that it's my mission at this point. I do know that my oldest son has picked up my new book, Dangerous Imagination, Silent Assimilation. I gave them some John Lash and some Dr. Coleman for Christmas. So they are open to.
You gave him some easy reading.
I gave them some easy reading, baby. But so that's where they're at. They've gotten past this initial absolute assault that was the murder of their grandmother, and they're able to take in some of the stuff that they need to know and do it very quickly, so that they can be who they need to be now. And my children are not. I mean, every child globally born past a certain time is here for this reason.
Cara, just going back for 1 second, I just want to circle back to when you were on the Richie Allen show and, the question came up, how do you debate contrail versus chemtrail? In your view, how do we get out of that cycle? Because that is a gigantic problem.
Well, yeah, one of the things, the only thing I know how to do as a writer is write. So that's why I got Harold, my friend Harald, and said, we have to do this. We have to do this. I think this is something that we're called to do next. And at that point, I had no idea what it was going to be at all. But I knew that we had to do something together that would add to the avalanche. Add to that. Push the rocks down the mountain, Mike. Let's get this done.
Yeah.
So that everybody understands and can break free of this thing. I mean, and once once that moment occurs, like, why can't I get past that question? I think people really start to understand that they're in a mind-numbing Novocaine-ish kind of trap.
Right. My brother and I had this conversation, and my brother, he helps me run the blog. He said, "Hey, Mike, look, even if it's persistent, quote unquote, contrails," he says, "that's not good either." Yeah. So, right. So we're debating something that is absolutely ludicrous because whether you want to call it chemtrails or persistent contrails that stick around for hours on end, neither is good. So people need to rise above that and start to put action in place in which they can start addressing this and, getting this thing put away.
I think Harold had I'm so excited that he said the word infopathic.
Yeah.
It's not homeopathic anymore. No, he's right. It's absolutely infopathic, because this is an informational attack.
Yeah.
That's where it's coming from. It is on that level, this artificial intelligence, informational level. And so everything we do has to be infopathic. And if we are the purveyors if we are that conduit, that magic moment between idea and manifestation, we have to step back into that understanding as well and believe in ourselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Information in. What is it? People say it. If garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's the same principle. Information. It's be that gateway again. As above, so below. How many ways do we tell ourselves this?
Right. So I guess to the audience, to answer the question about how do we break through, how do we make change? Because I think a lot of people get stuck on that. It's like, oh, this thing is just too big. I don't know what to do. But the thing is, if everybody stepped up to the plate, I had a little rant on Facebook the other day about that. But but as an example, you and Harald writing the books, blogs, websites, radio shows, people who are good at video and creating documentaries, continue to put that information out there, continue to push the wagon until the wheels fall off, essentially. That's how we get there. And everybody can do their bit. And even if it's a little bit, it's more than what was happening the day before when you weren't doing anything.
Right. And frankly, I think we're close. I honestly think we're close. People are trying to come up with ways to actually manifest this in the material.
Yeah.
Because of that question. What do we do? What can I do? Oh my God, that's so this idea that I can put information back into the morphic field is so voodoo to me. I mean, I can't relate to that idea. But there are people who are trying to come up with ways, no matter how flawed they may be, or they may turn out to be, to enact our capabilities as spiritual warriors, and at least give us an idea of how to go about using our physicality, or using our material body, or using the fact that we are here on this plane right now to change, to affect change. Yeah.
Yep.
You just had John Lash on with apparently a phenomenally. Was that you? That was you. You had the interview, right?
No, that was an interview we had with Henrik.
Oh God, that was Red Ice.
Oh God, I wish I had John on the show. No, that was that's okay. We could talk about that. He was on
Red Ice. Yeah.
He was on Red Ice with Henrik, and John had come up with this game plan, which some people crapped on because it was too quote unquote esoteric and so on and so forth. That it was just a bunch of new agey stuff, I guess is how they were looking at it. But I didn't view it that way at all. I mean, I looked at it as this is John's strong point, and he's going to utilize the tools that he's an expert in, and he's going to apply them.
Yeah, I was very. I looked at it and I thought, this has yet to pan out. I can see 50 or 60% of this that's absolutely I can agree with in terms of what I know about spirituality, what I know about the morphic field, all of those sorts of things, the return of Sophia, who we really are and what we're really standing on, all of those things. And the rest of it has to be, remains to be seen. But you know what? He's trying. Right. At least he's trying to put 2 hands and 2 feet to the question, what can we do? All right, you got hats off to him for that. You can't just shoot that down just because I don't know. It did at least elicit some seriously allergic responses in some people, which I thought was pretty. So it's hitting some kind of nerve somewhere, Mike. Right?
Well, it's hitting a nerve, but the other thing that it says to me, Karen, you and I have spoken about this before, is that even within the community which is seeking truth, there is this line of division which says, look, if you don't think the way I think, then you're not thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually invited, Mike, and we've talked about this as well, because I have a real problem with what I would call the cult of personality that goes along with any kind of coming out on a large scale level, trying to tell millions and millions of people what's up. Inevitably, it becomes a cult of personality. I don't care who you are, what country you're living in. It's just the way things are set up, and the way things were set up by Edward Bernays. Thank you very much. It's all about being a movie star in a way. But I was asked by a woman, in all genuineness, I'm sure, to be part at the very last minute to be part of this radiothon that was going on chemtrails. My friend Mark McCandlish was on it. Michael Murphy, Dane Wigington.
Yeah, I had seen the
Did
post
you
on
see
that.
this? Did you see
Yes.
this? This guy that calls himself the Canadian Spartacus in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, him. And a couple other people. I didn't see Sophia on the list, Sophia
No.
Smallstone, which kind of surprised me. But they asked me at the very last minute to be part of that and told me they had not been able to get a hold of me and some other things. And she had just listened to your interview with me twice, probably the one where I was complaining about the egotism that's infected our movement in the United States. And I didn't want to go on it. And I didn't want to go on it because I was going on, I felt like there were people on that were participating in it that had been infected in a way, that were part of this, what I call division, and what we're both calling this division, this infighting about who knows more and who's more right. And, I don't want to be part of that. I'd rather go my own way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about, it's people, they latch on to that celebrity.
Yeah, I don't want to be part of that. At first,
No.
it pissed me off that nobody was paying attention to what I was doing. And it pissed me off because I paid a huge price, some of the prices, and I outlined them in The Sun Thief. And my mom died for this, for God's sake. Okay? So it made me mad that they were ignoring what we had to say, what she was trying to say. But the reality is there was an open door in Germany. There was an open door in Europe, and there's a reason for that.
Right.
To go out of the country and then try to fly under the radar getting back into the country. Because as I have said, I believe that we live in an electromagnetic prison camp in the United States, that we are bound in many ways in terms of our volition toward getting information on a conscious level, which is why it's so important that the morphic field be recognized and understood and relied upon, because it will save us. But in terms of just accessing information in the United States, we're absolutely bound. Every publishing house is part of it. All of the media is part of it that isn't part of alternative media. And once you start making a name for yourself as a chemtrail warrior, so to speak, you become part of it in a way as well.
Yeah, I mean, I found that if I just do my own thing, I apply my own critical thinking, I'm better off. Going back to the radiothon that you were talking about, there was one person there that not quite happy with me because I had somebody else on the show that we talked about the co-opting of the geoengineering movement, or at least the attempt to co-opt geoengineering movement,
Yeah.
And, that person decided that they were going to, and this is going to sound stupid to the audience, but you'll get what I'm saying here, to defriend me and others that were associated with that particular discussion or that particular radio show. So that just tells you right there the level of childishness that could be very prevalent even in the truth movement, where somebody's like, hey, I don't want you talking to that person. Because
exactly.
you talk to that person, I don't want anything to do with you. I'm like, grow up. Would you grow up, please? What are
funny.
You think you're the only voice that people have to listen to? Come on, give me a break.
Yeah.
Right.
It's funny too, because I talked to Harald about that radiothon, and I had said to this woman, look, I'm getting ready to start doing interviews in the United States, myself and my writing partner right now, Harald Kautz-Vella. And if you wanted to interview us together, that would be something altogether different. And she replied to me that she actually wasn't an interviewer, but that she could ask Dane if he wanted to interview us. And I said, and also this Canadian fellow, I can't remember, Sylvain Henry, I think his name is.
Yeah.
And I said, nah, thanks anyway. I've got other stuff. I've got other stuff to do. And then I told Harald about it, and he said, I'll talk to anybody because, as you can tell by talking to him, he's just like, bring it.
Yeah.
I'll get on and talk to anybody, and all that does is highlight what he calls their demon, and for him it's a win-win situation. But that's how Harald operates in the world. For me, I'd rather use my energy someplace else,
Yeah, I mean, that's fine to take that approach. There's nothing wrong with that. My point was that within the community itself, that there are agendas, and and you have to be very careful because some of these folks come across as very sincere, very genuine, but you have to take a step back and you have to assess it. Are they really genuine? That's all I'm saying. And don't get me wrong. There are many people in the movement I have some of my best contacts, best friends, colleagues that are in the movement that I can speak to, and they are genuine people. They're great. And there are others that I have learned that maybe not so. I don't
Yeah,
connect with them as often.
Gordon Duff actually operates on that level too. He talks to people that, and you go, "What are you doing, man?" And his reaction is always, "Look, I win. I talk to them. They try to shut me up. They can't. I win." So I mean, he's right.
It's impossible to shut Gordon Duff up.
I know. I just got after him for being on the show. I was like, "Gordon, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? Don't be on that show." He said, "I win. I win. I win. I win." And I said,
Yeah.
"Okay, all right." So I said, "Gordon, don't be a butt munch about it. I'm just, I don't want you breathing the same air as some of these people." But he just gets in there and mixes it up. So, I mean, yeah, that's the way it has to happen. But yeah, so I've come to I guess I've come to making peace with myself about being alone, just being on my path, and as long as I follow my path, the doors seem to open. Mike, I don't know if I sent you this or not, but one of the most amazing things happened. Somebody showed it to me. I can't remember who now, but somebody showed me there are these events going on in Germany, the Monday meetings they call them, and it's a kind of a holdover from, I guess it's a renewal of some of the protests that they started to do.
Right.
Probably prior to World War II. Anyway, they sent me this. Somebody sent me this video of this fellow, and I was so taken aback, and I was so amazed. It was a Monday meeting in a town called Rostock, which I believe is an industrial shipping town, perhaps maybe on the sea. And it was the sun was going down. It was getting dark, and there was a bit of rain. He was standing under an umbrella, and you just had this image of this one lone man standing there under an umbrella with the rain coming down in the dark, talking to whoever was gathered there. And guess what he did, Mike? He held up a copy of the German translation of The Sun Thief.
Wow. All right.
He opened it, and he started to read from it. Now, for me, this was an example of how what we're doing is working.
Yeah.
All right. This guy, who knows who this guy is, but made it his business to stand up under an umbrella in the rain in a seaport town in Germany to a gathering of activists, open The Sun Thief and start to read. All right. Now, I don't need Dane Wigington or anybody else for that.
No, that's what I was saying before. I mean, you write your books, you have your blogs and your websites and your radio shows, and you create documentaries. Somebody else doesn't have to facilitate that for you. You could be your own facilitator.
I don't need their acknowledgement or their
validation
of any of this stuff. My mom is bringing this stuff. My mom gave her life for this stuff. Okay, who could stand in the way of that anyway? Really, that's from the other side. That's going to happen, man. That is going to happen, whether they like it or not, whether the Arctic ice is melting or not. That story is going to be told of this woman who gave her life in a crosswalk so that we could all wake up and know this shit. Okay?
And Harald touched on it before, and you had commented also that, we always tend to look at things from the perspective of there's negative forces, there's negative unseen forces, but there are also positive forces. Positive unseen forces.
Yeah.
So, that battle is going on both sides of that veil that we don't typically get to look into.
Oh, they're helping us all the time, Michael. They're here all the time.
Yep.
They're here with us. They're helping us. And we just have to remember that.
And that's why it's very important for humanity to get back connected into their spirituality, get back to being connected back to Mother Earth, because the more of that people can do that, then the amount of help that we're going to be able to get from the other side of that curtain, as I mentioned before, is going to grow exponentially. And, the Matrix and the controllers, the puppet masters, whatever you want to call them, have spent an enormous amount of time and energy trying to separate humanity from that connection. Yeah,
absolutely. And by the way, I was just thinking about Harald. I don't know why in particular, but he kind of downplayed this idea that he's not constantly being harassed. But I promise you, I know he's constantly being harassed. The thing is, he doesn't care.
Yeah.
He believes in his ability to survive through his heart, to survive anything they can throw at him.
Yeah, I can imagine, because the stuff that Harald's was talking about and the stuff that he's working on, it's true. Now,
It is true.
right? It is true. And the
Can
thing
you
is,
not feel it when he talks? When he talks, you can feel the truth of it.
yeah, absolutely. And the more research you do and the more you go down the rabbit hole,
Mm-hmm.
the more that you know that these dots all get connected.
Yeah.
So, people have a hard time believing that it's this abstract that, we talk about black goo or sentient oil, and we're talking about black magic, and we're talking about numerology. Oh, you people are all out of your mind. But the truth
Right.
of the matter is that stuff is all true and it's all happening. And essentially, those are the tools that they're using to control humanity.
Yeah, I did talk about that a little bit in my part of the book because you can't divorce that aspect of things from any aspect of things. I mean, I try not to hammer on it, but it's definitely there because it's part of the warp and the weave of what we're dealing with right now. But we are magical beings ourselves. We are not hostages of some people who have figured out how to use magic. That's not it at all. We are all magical beings, all of us, every single one of us.
Right.
And I was also thinking about this idea of the competing activists in the United States and how just I reject that and I walk away from that. When Harald and I were speaking together for the first time, really, in Saarbrücken last year, I went on first and then he followed me because we have similar topics, yeah? And I remember what he said to me was, what are you going to talk about? Because whatever you talk about, I'll talk about the rest of it. I mean, come on. How cooperative can it get?
Right.
Tell me what you're going to talk about and then I'll talk about whatever it is you don't talk about.
Right.
Okay, no problem, right?
That's the way it's supposed to be.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So, I mean, essentially, I'm very excited I think that may have been the first time that Harold's been in the United States. I'm very excited for him to get his energy and his great knowledge out into our country and see what that does to crack the scleroticized, frozen sort of situation that they have us in. And I'm really excited for people to pick up this new book because, as Harald says, it's a no excuses book. And believe me, there's nothing in here that isn't. Not reading this book does not mean it's not happening, guys. It just means that you're acknowledging that it happens. And if you will acknowledge that this is actually going on in your mind and in your heart, then that will help fill the field with true information. And we will be able to throw off this yoke.
Yeah.
That's all. That's all it's for.
Very good, Cara. And did you have any more information you wanted to get out for people to connect with you?
Vortex.
Yes.
Vortex, courage.me, still going strong, 149 countries. Thank you very much. And we're doing pretty well. I mean, especially for a new, we're in 9 languages. I try to put as many languages up as I can. I try to talk Harald into making contributions as much as he can. I actually bring some of your stuff over whenever I can, and we have a lot of original thinking there. So I'm very proud of what's going on there. I have noticed that putting Dangerous Imagination, Silent Assimilation on the market has encouraged people to start reading The Sun Thief, which just blows me away. Blows me away how that works, but I guess that works. So read that as well. And I am getting ready to inaugurate a serious website that just has to do with me so that people can order my stuff and look at my stuff directly. Because I don't trust anything that's out there. You can get my stuff through Amazon.com, obviously, but I don't really trust anything that's controllable on a national or informational level. So I'm trying to make it so that you can reach me and my work directly. So when that happens, I'll just send you the site, Michael, and maybe you'll be kind enough to throw it up so people can have it. But come to Vortex, read what's going on with Vortex, and stay up to date with what we're trying to put up there.
Yeah, we've linked up to a number of your articles on my blog, so that's how we share, ideas and share information.
It is.
Hey, Cara, I was wondering before we kind of wrap up here, I wanted just to talk a little bit and just tell our audience that our good friend and colleague Pamela Tartar is trying to get better, and so any well wishes, prayers, energy that our audience can send Pamela's way, any kind of healing that we can send her way, that really appreciate it if we can do that.
Yes, I thank you, Michael, for putting that out there because Pamela is one of those people whose work is mighty, and her work is so important. And she struggles through all of the challenges that have been laid on her to get it out there. She never stops. She never gives up, ever. And anything that we can do in the field to support her getting back on her feet, please let's do. I can't tell you how important she's been in my life since I've gotten to know her. And no matter what she's going through, she has all this energy, this beautiful, loving, healing energy to send out. I don't know where the heck she gets it, really, because she's so, and she's just amazing. So, yeah, let's do that for her, please. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah. I mean, whenever people say to me, I don't know what to do or it's too hard.
Right.
Exactly. And I think about what Pamela does and how she goes about defying all the odds to continue to do the things that she does. It's truly an amazing story. So,
thanks, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope if she hears this, Pamela, we love you so much.
We do.
We do. So. And David, her husband, David.
Yeah, David.
Who does so much to get her out there so we can all hear her and talk to her.
Yeah, good people, really good people. And so what I would like everybody to do, even though this is my show, is to go to Pure Momentum Network. That's Pamela and David's network, and listen to all the excellent interviews and shows that Pamela has done. And has gotten some very, very important information out to the masses. So please go to Pure Momentum Network and take a listen.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. And thanks for having us on to talk about this.
You're very welcome, Cara. You guys can come back, as you know, anytime. I found Harold's discussion, especially because you and I have spoken before. I mean, this is the first time I've heard Harold, And,
right.
And
everybody needs to hear Harold.
Oh, it's just
everybody needs to hear Harold.
It's eye-opener discussion. So
Yep. He has no fear, my friend. He has absolutely no fear, and he's esoterically so deep. He's so plugged into the pulse of what's going on with this planet.
Yeah.
And he has no fear of sharing it. It's amazing. It's amazing and beautiful. So yeah, I want to get him out into the public as much as I can in the States, because I think it will do a lot to heal the country.
Well, thank you for bringing him on.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Cara. So I'll let you go, and I'll have the show out probably, but within the next 10 days or so.
Okay, baby.
All right.
I'll see you later. Yep, I'll be back in London. I'm going back to London on Monday or Tuesday. I can't remember. Monday, I think.
All righty.
All right.
So
Talk
long,
to you
Harold.
soon.
Harold just came on video.
Did he? Bye, Harold.
Bye-bye. And that concludes part 2 of my interview with Cara St. Louis and Harald Kautz-Vella, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. Cara and Harold's book, Dangerous Imagination, Silent Assimilation, can be purchased at Amazon.com in both paperback and Kindle. Cara's website is Vortex, Conscious and Courageous, and can be reached by going to vortexcourage.me, where you can find many fine articles, including material by Harald. Please see the show notes below for any additional links. And as always, I'd like to thank everyone for listening and visiting the blog, The Sage of Quay. Also, if you get a moment, please take a listen to my album, Leaving Dystopia, by heading over to laboroflovemusic.com. And remember, live in truth and always serve creation. It's really that simple. See everyone next week. Be safe, enjoy, and God bless.